the station covering all of the DMV. This is DC News Now.
All right, it's 7 o'clock on this Thursday morning. Good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. I'm Corey James.
Good morning. I'm Tanaya Wright. We're going to start you off with a live look outside this morning. Look at that. People out there jogging. Cherry blossoms are blooming. It is a nice day, Jackie.
Yeah, beautiful out there this morning as we're getting closer and closer towards sunrise. Starting to notice that horizon brightening up. But temperatures out there this morning a bit on the cooler side, but thankfully we're tracking less wind out there in comparison to the last couple of days. We're talking about temperatures in the upper 20s. Manassas, Waldorf, Fredericksburg, Culpeper, low 20s out towards Luray and Woodstock. But over towards DC, we're starting off mid 30s along with Hagerstown, also upper 30s, Frederick and Leesburg. That wind speed, we're tracking the wind mainly out of the south-southwest. It is much lighter than yesterday. Sustained winds between 3 to 10 miles per hour. Where we are seeing that light breeze, so you can feel a little bit cooler out there. Partly cloudy conditions at this point. We just have some clouds sliding by. But as we round out the rest of your Thursday, we're tracking high temperatures sliding back into the low 60s later on this afternoon. Will be quite picture perfect for any of those outdoor plans you may have later on today. Just how long will this nice weather last? All those details coming up. Shanika's here with the all-important traffic update. How are those roadways right now?
Well, following up on this one crash in Northern Virginia, this is 395 heading southbound, and that's right near Boundary Channel Drive. You could still see crash activity to the right. Watch for those flashing lights there. You are getting by, but slowly, so allow for some extra time there. Let's flip over to the maps. Looking at the rest of your roadways, 66 seems to be a problem. You're pretty slow, so account for that as you're heading out through Centerville and Fairfax heading eastbound. So that is right before the Beltway. That's when you're the heaviest.
All right, Shanika, thank you. Your time right now is 7:01, and your No and Go headlines this morning. We're learning more about the deadly car crash that killed 3 people and injured 2 others yesterday morning along Rock Creek Parkway. According to DMV records, one of the vehicles had over $12,000 in unpaid parking tickets. More on this story in just a moment.
Leaders in Frederick say a new guardrail is going to be placed along the same stretch of Route 15 where a tanker truck crashed and exploded nearly 2 weeks ago. Last night, the community held a meeting to answer questions after the explosion. Our Tosin Fakile has more coming up in a live report in just a few minutes.
And this morning, the search continues for Roy McGrath. He was the chief of staff to former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan. Now, yesterday, the FBI raided McGrath's Florida home. Right now, he is wanted on wire fraud and embezzlement charges.
The Swiss bank Credit Suisse says it's borrowing about $54 billion from the Swiss government. It is just the latest bank to struggle in the wake of the collapse of 2 major U.S. banks this week. The White House is reassuring Americans their accounts are safe. The FDIC has expanded their coverage beyond $250,000 for all Silicon Valley Bank depositors. All right, well, new information this morning about a car crash that killed 3 people and injured 2 others on Rock Creek Parkway early Wednesday morning.
According to the Department of Motor Vehicles, one of those vehicles had several violations. Now, DC News Now, we checked license plate records on that vehicle, more than 40 citations. In addition to that, that vehicle had unpaid speeding tickets totaling to more than $12,000. And authorities say that vehicle took off from police after a traffic stop before colliding with the Honda car on Rock Creek Parkway. To bring you up to speed on all of this, officers say they stopped the Lexus SUV but did not chase after it when the driver took off. The 3 men inside that Honda all died at the scene. 2 people inside the Lexus were taken to the hospital. We're told one is in critical condition and the other is expected to be okay. At this time, police are not answering questions about why they stopped the Lexus. They're also not saying more about the unpaid speeding tickets. We, of course, will continue to make calls and we'll bring you the very latest as soon as we get it.
An immigrant from Jordan was shot and killed in Southeast on Sunday night. Police say the shooting happened during a car chase. 2 men were killed. A 3rd person was injured. A spokesperson for the Embassy of Jordan has confirmed Hamza Abdul Halal was one of the people killed. His cousin says he was working behind the wheel of that vehicle that night and was sending money back home to support his family in Jordan.
He was like dreaming, when I grow up, I will go to America. I will live the American dream. I will work for my family. The criminal rate in Washington, like no one can live in that situation. If somebody is just working and he had shot, what's the meaning of life?
Police say they do not believe any shots were fired from inside the vehicle. And at this point, police are not identifying the second victim. They say they are looking for a sedan that took off after the shootings.
Time right now is 7:04 this morning. People who live in Frederick, Maryland have more answers about safety and questions rather after the tanker crash and explosion 2 weeks ago. Our Tosin Fakile is live this morning near US 15 where that explosion happened. And Tosin, some say safety improvements, they could be seen as early as this week.
Yeah, Corey, that's right. We're talking as soon as Sunday. That's what officials say. And the first safety measure that is up would be guardrails that will go right here on US 15 by Apple Avenue. Those who live in those homes near this highway heard and felt the impact of that unfortunate incident. Now, during that meeting last night, neighbors got to make safety suggestions and ask questions, also got answers from state and local officials. Many questions centered around concerns for safety and noise. Many neighbors say they want a noise barrier, and officials say that noise barrier is part of the plan and it's included in the widening US 15 project. And guardrails is something one Frederick woman says she wants to see get done.
I just think that it should have been something that didn't happen. I think that they need to put up a wall barrier or speed cameras, or even the police on the streets could actually help prevent something like this.
And city officials say they are drafting a letter for the state showing what safety improvements are needed. Officials say widening of Route 15, that construction is expected to begin in 2026. We're live in Frederick. I'm Tosin Fakile for DC News Now. Back to you.
And Tosin, those changes that are going to be made likely can make an impact. But what are some of the other changes that neighbors are asking for?
Yeah, Corey, one neighbor actually suggested reducing the speed limit here on US 15, and that suggestion got a really loud applause at that meeting yesterday. And state officials there said that is something they will look into and plan to get a study done about. Back to you.
All right, Tosin, thank you. Your time right now is 7:07 this morning. The family of a Silver Spring woman killed in an apartment fire. They're flying to the DMV to fight for change. 25-year-old Melanie Diaz's father says they are traveling from Florida to Annapolis to attend the first hearing on a bill to put fire extinguishers in all high-rise buildings that do not have automatic sprinklers. Now, according to officials, the fire started inside a 7th-floor apartment, and they say it forced the evacuation of more than 400 people. So far, investigators say they have several possible causes of the fire, but they can't key in on one.
He woke up to people yelling fire, fire. It's kind of crazy to know that we won't know what the actual reasoning was. It's kind of shocking, to be honest.
As for today's hearing, Diaz's family hopes fire extinguishers will be in all buildings by July 1st. Meantime, there's still no word on what caused an explosion at a wastewater treatment plant in Baltimore County. It happened Wednesday afternoon at the Dundalk Wastewater Treatment Plant. Now, police say the blast ripped the wall off the plant. No workers were hurt. Officials say no hazardous materials were involved.
Your time right now is 7:08 this morning. The EPA is ready to crack down on toxic PFAS chemicals found in drinking water of millions of Americans. According to the EPA, DC recorded some of the highest levels of PFAS in drinking water. The rule would reduce the acceptable level of the compound in drinking water. The chemicals have gone into waterways from factories. Environmental groups say the exposure to these chemicals can be linked to certain types of cancer. They say the EPA must also address the root of the problem.
Exposure to PFAS chemicals are linked to serious health harms, including some kinds of cancer, reproductive and developmental harms like lower birth weights and lower sperm count. The responsibility should really be with the polluter.
The EPA's Water Division says once the rule is finalized, local water utility companies will be required to test water to keep up with the new standards.
All right, the search continues this morning for Roy McGrath, the former chief of staff to former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan. Now, FBI agents, they raided Roy McGrath's Florida home. It's been 3 days since McGrath was supposed to appear in court for federal corruption charges. McGrath is accused of stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from the state of Maryland. His indictment also says he used state funds for personal expenses. And stocks are tumbling as worries grow over the strength of banks after the collapse of Silicon Valley and Signature Banks.
That is right. The collapse are the second and third largest bank failures in U.S. history. Let's take a look at the markets right now. The S&P 500 was down 0.8 0.7% on Wednesday afternoon trading. The Dow Jones was down about 0.9%, and the Nasdaq increased by 0.05 percentage points, as fears about the world banking system are reaching Europe now.
Yeah, the White House has reassured Americans their accounts are safe, but panic and questions, they still remain this morning. The latest fears in the banking now are focused on a major bank called Credit Suisse. Now, the bank's biggest backer, Saudi National Bank, has decided not to give them any more money. On Capitol Hill, Senator Elizabeth Warren pointed to Trump administrators' policies of rolling back regulations as the cause of failures. Republicans are pushing back on the Biden administration's response.
To load up on risks, run up their profits, pay their executives giant bonuses, and eventually blow the banks.
Banks in Oklahoma, in rural towns, are about to pay a special fee to be able to bail out millionaires in San Francisco.
Some lawmakers believe it's time to permanently raise the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation's starting deposit right now. That starts at $250,000.